Long term, I see that First Nations throughout Canada all have to be self-governing. I see a time where the Department of Indian Affairs may exist as a department, but they won't be in that decision-making capacity. I see the long term being that First Nations must manage their own affairs and must do so under their own governance authority. So I see this as the impetus that will help meet that challenge. It's coming very, very quickly, very, very fast. Further the story is heard, the more First Nations interest will be to want to be part of this process and actually being the decision makers over their reserve lands. There's tremendous success stories from one end of Canada to the other, and it's only building. But to get to that level, the First Nation has to have governance authority in place. And that's why I see the majority in time, if not all First Nations in Canada, will need that level of governance authority so that people have confidence to invest on their lands. The power with the Land Code allows for First Nations to pass their own environmental laws, and that's just one example. That's very powerful, because only governments can do that. If we compare ourselves with many other municipalities or the Government of Canada or any of the provinces or countries around the world, I think you're going to see First Nations are much more knowledgeable based on the customs and the history of our peoples from one end of Canada to the other than other communities. And I think that is something that's being embodied in the lawmaking capacity, and that it's something that other Canadians should really think about and take seriously as well. When we look at the way lands are being managed, forestry lands, how waters are being protected, I think we've got some tremendous success stories. In renewable energy alone, we have many of the First Nations are seriously working ahead to advance the technology in renewable energy. And I think the First Nations are in fact leading the way. Governments are setting up and taking notice to that. Others, outside governments, are taking this process very, very seriously and are in fact seeing that First Nations can lead the way in these types of activities. Once you have the power of governance and once you understand that process, then jobs, economic opportunities, I think, can naturally flow. That's what we're seeing right now, and that's a change in times. So the public are seeing First Nations not as the beggars on the streets, but as real contributors to the overall Canadian society, to the economic benefit that this nation needs. And we're part of that, and we're growing. Our communities that are part of this process, from Vancouver Island right across Canada, right through to Newfoundland, have different types of land codes. Similar as far as the overall objectives, but different in how they're exercised, how policies are developed. That's important for any government. We have tried to assist at the First Nations Resource Centre by having training programs, having courses provided that will assist some of the communities that need that assistance. Over the past few years, we have really accelerated on the growth and the demand of First Nation land management. It's evidence that what we're doing is working, and it's evidence that the success stories are reaching out to the First Nations, and I think that is why the demand is growing and the need is there. First Nations want to be self-governing for the most part, and that demand is only going to continue to grow as the months and years roll by.